Welcome, everyone, to this fourth session of council on Monday, February 13th, 2023. I'd call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. We had no closed session this evening, so the next item is, if everyone would rise, we'll play the national anthem. Please be seated. We acknowledge that we are being hosted on ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, Michisagi, and Omama-Winini people. We acknowledge and welcome the presence of all Indigenous peoples, including the Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations from across this vast land, who also makes this place home. The lands we are on today are recognized in the two-row wampum, Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Treaty 27, and the Crawford Purchase. So the next item up is open forum. The first 15 minutes of any regular meeting will be set aside for open forum. An individual may address council to voice opinion on subjects of municipal concern, excluding matters subject to the public meeting, i.e. Planning Act. They can only speak once and for no more than 3 minutes. Notice is hereby provided that under the authority of the Municipal Act 2001 and in accordance with the Ontario Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, that all information provided for or at a public meeting, consultation, or other public process are considered part of the public record. In-person meetings have resumed with a hybrid format option where individuals can join electronically. Anyone wishing to speak at a council meeting can register in advance, which I have here, or use the raise hand feature option when called upon by the chair. So we have the list here of the ones that have signed up for this evening. The first one, Kirk Corkery, regarding the ferry sign. So if you could just state your name and address and then proceed with your what you want to present.
Thank you, Worship. My name is Kirk Corkery. I'm from the Embers Valley Community Alliance. Your Worship, members of council. This evening, I would like to address you concerning the use of the signboards at the ferry. On your agenda tonight, item 14.2. I came to council in May last year to request that the existing policy be upheld so that community messages could be placed on the signboards. These signboards are a key messaging channel for Island residents. Councillor Porter's motion in May and the clear intent of council at the time was to restore access for the community groups. It has taken 9 months, less 11 days, for this item to return to council. The recommendation is to use a number of alternative methods, including bulletin boards and electronic messaging in the terminal buildings, which utterly fails to grasp that 99% of people never get out of their cars. The only ones who frequent the building are the school kids. This proposition completely misses the target audience. Let's examine some of the other arguments in the report. It states that staff has concerns about sign pollution, leading to vital operational emergency information being overlooked. Really? I guess that's why in January and February, we continue to have the notice about no camping on township lands being prominently displayed. Obviously, this is not a real problem. The report states that the messaging requires special software and is not a simple task. Of course, there's special software, but difficult. The manufacturer's sales pitch highlights the ease with which their signs can be updated. These boards have full motion video if the township chooses to implement it. We'd indicated that we were prepared to help manage the board if resourcing became an issue for the town, but this was never a requirement from our perspective. If staff wish to retain 100% control of the boards, we have no issue with that. It says staff have to deliver a clear approval process for message, priorities, and content. There already is a policy that states the priorities, and the report admits the township already displays messages for community groups at the W.J. Henderson Center. Why is it therefore so difficult to work something similar for the residents of Amherst Island? Are they not entitled to a similar level of service? To end on a positive note, the Community Alliance and all the community groups on the island are more than prepared to help in drafting any new policy, and we welcome the opportunity to assist staff. We will go more than halfway, but we need to be invited to the table. We are all striving to make Loyalist a better place. On behalf of all the community organizations on Amherst Island, I am asking for your support tonight to direct staff to provide access to the ferry signboards for community messaging by not later than May 1st of this year. We've waited long enough, and there's no justification for further delays. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next name is Richard Lapointe. You want to come to the podium? Again, state your name and your address and proceed with the information. And one thing I missed mentioning, there's two things I missed before we started. You'll notice on the screen the countdown from 3 minutes down. When it gets to 1, it goes yellow. And when it gets to 10 seconds, I believe it is, it goes red. So we just ask you to keep an eye on that so we keep the meeting moving along. And just for the general audience, we just ask that anyone that could please turn off your cell phones or at least put them on mute. It is disruptive to the meeting and delays it if phones are going off. Thank you. Please proceed.
Richard Lapointe, 4005 Front Road on Stella, Amherst Island. I'm also the president of AIMS, which is the Amherst Island Youth Society. And I'd like to just simply concur with Kurt and state that we have put up signs in the buildings on either side. And most people you talk to are not aware of that because they don't listen. They go across on the ferry. They're there in the last minute. They don't stop to use the washroom or any of that kind of thing. They get on the ferry and they go across. From time to time, they do stop on the way back. They might get there early and use the facilities, but they're in and out right away and don't even look at the bulletin board. So I think that because of that, we'd like to see us be able to use the bulletin board to be able to announce meetings and special events that are going on.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next one on the list is Dave Bryant. Same thing, if you could state your name and address and
Good evening, Council. My name is Dave Bryant. I live at 172 Bruin Crescent in Bath, Ontario, in the East End. Earlier this evening, I asked for a handout to be presented to you all in regards to our water issue. That will save me some time, because 3 minutes and I couldn't talk about it. We were told that unless we had new information, we couldn't get a 5-minute stint to come up and present for 5 minutes. It had to be in the 3. We're still plugging, I guess you could call it, the old information, but we can tear apart the report that was written and given to council. And there's stuff in there that is not true, not even close to being true. Council at one point said, what can we do to fix this? Mr. Mayor was the one that made that initial statement, just the evening he was made the mayor before the election. One of the issues was the water, what do you call them? The water meters. And the water meters made no difference, even though it says 1 to 2 PSI. But when you look at your own charts that you put out, it shows spikes in the system, anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds. Yet we were told this wasn't going to happen. They made the excuse that it was turning off and on hydrants. Well, do you do that in the middle of the night or on a weekend? No. So I put meters, and other members have put meters on our water, and we can literally watch it fluctuate 10 pounds in less than 6 seconds at times. But we were told that's not happening. You can have a shower, and at the beginning of the shower, it's hard. At the end of the shower, it's not. So we're just asking if we could only get that reasonable amount, not what they said 30%, it's actually 45, 47% reduction in our water pressure. We would love to have a 30% reduction. We would have been probably happy with that, but 45 is not reasonable. The plumbing in our area, if you look at your own map, you got 8-inch pipes, you got 6-inch pipes, and then including in a new section on Sir John Johnson, they put in a 4-inch pipe to run those houses. So there's an up and down fluctuation even because of the infrastructure. I guess the bottom line is, if you'll give me something in writing, somebody, staff or council, I will go around door to door along with my colleagues, and we'll deliver it so that people in that area know where we stand. Are we going to get it fixed or are we not? Just be definitive. Tell us what's going on. Coming back and forth like this and being shut out by council, that's not right. I've been there 36 years, never heard of it before. Thank you.
thank you. The next one on the list is Heather Muir. Same thing, if you could give your name and address and then proceed with your information.
Good evening. I'm Heather Muir and I live in the community known as Spring Meadows in Bath, comprising the streets of Sir John Johnson, Purdy Road, and Coon Crescent. Last summer, we submitted to Loyalist Township Council this petition with 116 signatures from 94 residences in our neighborhood, each one asking you to reinstate our water pressure to the same level it was prior to the arbitrary and uninformed changes township staff made on March 23rd, 2022. Nothing has changed. The staff made apologies, held meetings, made excuses, even offered to take steps to make change. Nothing happened. Yes, township staff changed water meters in some homes, saying it was the first step and might incrementally improve water pressure, but nothing changed. Amazingly, township staff were either ignorant of the purpose and properties of the meters, was someone less than honest and conscientious in their role?
Excuse me,
Yes,
no derogatory comments towards staff.
just
This is a workplace and we have to keep a healthy workplace. Thank you.
absolutely.
Please proceed.
Or they purposefully misled us and you. It is impossible for the water meters to improve our water pressure, as you will hear from Dr. Crowley Jackson, and there is new proof of this. The deputy mayor encouraged us during the re-election forums to keep coming and speaking to council meetings about our concerns. Ms. Parks has encouraged us to make our voices and issues heard. In these very difficult economic times, the decisions township staff made without informing us have cost us time, money, anxiety, and frustration. And now, when we have proof that your first step cannot remediate the inadequate water pressure, we are denied the chance to present another delegation. Why? Is it not new enough that the information from township staff is not what the very manufacturer of the water meters says is true? Did you know that the first step from the township staff was just a guise to make it the last step? And that the subsequent report was to ensure that our needs and concerns would no longer be heard or prioritized? What are the next steps? When do you, as a council, recognize that report SR 2205, Bath East End water pressure update, was faulty and misleading, and that the new water meters are not and never have been made to fix the water pressure problem? When do you, as a council, help the residents you serve? We are feeling intentionally deceived, ignored, sidelined, cheated, and that you, as a council, have been fooled and made complicit. We believe that each of you is
Thank you.
honorable.
Excuse me, your time is up this evening. Thank you.
116 people in
Ms.
94
Muir?
households are looking for action.
Your time has expired. Thank you. The next up is Khalid Jassim.
Good evening, I'm Calvin Dawson. I live at 168 Crescent and Bath. I am speaking about water pressure reduction in our community and request your help. In previous council meeting, one of the council commended the staff for apologizing about non-performing community of water pressure reduction and say, well, people make mistakes. Assuming the staff action was an honest mistake, let us call it mistake one. The staff distributed a notice dated March 25th, 2022 to the community stating that water pressure reduction was approximately 30%. Mistake two. Water pressure reduction was about 45% and higher. Staff claimed that water pressure is according to MECP recommendation 50 to 70 psi and will remain stable. Mistake three. The neighborhood starting pressure is at very bottom of MECP recommendation and fluctuate down to 35 psi, sometimes even lower. See page 6 to 8 of the staff report SR 2205. We prove to council with data and graphs. The modeling and testing were questionable and do not agree with the basic hydrological engineering. We requested an explanation from consultant and staff members and received nothing, ignored. Mistake four. Based on resolution 2022-7117 carried by council on September 12, 2022 during council meeting, staff proposed installing MAC 10 flow meter from Neptune as first step to increase water pressure. Mistake five. It only measures flow and like any other meter. The following new information came last week from Neptune, manufacturer of MAC 10 through website and telephone conversation with Mr. Dev Contest. Both say MAC 10 flow meter is just a flow meter. It does not increase the pressure or overflow. Number two, Evan Utility and Municipal Project say MAC 10 is a pipe with sensors built into measure flow only. It does not increase water flow or pressure. These values provided by the manufacturer and distributor are contrary to staff claim that MAC 10 increase water flow. Mistake six. Although the meter installation was only a possible first step solution, and although this recommendation was based on misinformation, Council Roderick passed a motion seconded by Mr. Townend, resolution 2022-120 to accept the staff recommendation and take no further action against council recommendation 2022-7117. Now the questions are, what is the next step? Second question is, why is the motion accepted based on misinformation? I will request council help and response. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That completes the list that's being presented from in chambers. I'd now ask in the virtual audience, if anyone wishes to speak to council through the open forum, if they could use the raise hand feature, you can be brought into the meeting. None? Seeing none, we'll proceed. The next item is a notice of public meeting. Take notice that council, excuse me, will host a public meeting as part of the regular council meeting to receive comments and input from the public on the proposed municipal budget on Monday, February 27th, 2023 at 7 p.m. And further, council is providing notice that it intends to adopt the 2023 budget on Monday, March 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. The committee of the whole budget meetings are open to the public and residents could attend. The meetings were live streamed and recorded and available to view on the council portal and on YouTube. And copies of the 2023 operating and capital budgets are available at loyalist.ca/budget as of February 2nd, 2023. Written submissions will be accepted at the address at the township address here at 263 Main Street, P.O. Box 70, Odessa, Ontario. Attention to the Debbie Chapman, the township clerk. And now we'll hold a public meeting for Main Street Plaza Corp zoning bylaw amendment on 216 to 222 Main Street Bath D14 015 2022. So I turn to staff. Is there any information or presentation that you wish to provide this evening?
Through your worship, I'll be giving a quick overview of the application. So the authorized agent, Mr. Eric Tremblay, on behalf of the owner of the Street Plaza Corporation, Mr. Patrick Ray, has submitted this application. As a part of the application, the second radio station, broadcasting radio station on the mainland for Amherst radio station is proposed to set up within the Main Street Plaza. The intent of the application is to allow Amherst Island Radio to have a broadcasting radio station and a recording studio for Amherst Island Radio. The proposal entails the addition of a broadcasting and communications establishment as a permitted non-residential use under the current shopping center commercial exception 6, which is C462. The application has been circulated to all the applicable agencies, and all the comments received were in the support of the application. The comments were also passed on to the applicant and the authorized, and a rigorous review of all the planning legislation from provincial policy statement, official plan of the township was done, and there were no problems in that. So the staff is of the opinion to approve the proposed application. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. And so now we'll have a public meeting, and it's being held in accordance with the provisions of section 3412 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to consider an amendment to the Loyalist Township Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2001-38 as amended. The proposed amendment applies to property located parts of lots 12 and 13, concession broken front, and more particularly described as parts 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, and 15 on reference plan 29R 10203 and municipally addressed as 216 to 222 Main Street in the Village of Bath. The purpose of the effect of the amendment zoning bylaw to 2023-10 will amend zoning provisions for the shopping center commercial exception 6 zone C46 to permit broadcasting communications establishment for Amherst Island Radio Station to start a second broadcast recording studio with the ability to allow live acts to perform for live on-air broadcasting. If approved, all other zone requirements of the C4 and the C46 zone would apply. So now council will hear in person or by his or her counsel, solicitor, or agent, any person who claims to be affected by this application. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none, I'll go to the virtual audience. Is there anyone in the virtual audience that wishes to speak to this item? If so, please use the raise hand feature so you can be brought into the meeting. Seeing none, we'll proceed. Council, we have the report before us with the recommendation from staff. Are there any questions for staff before we proceed? Seeing none, how would we like to proceed? Deputy Mayor?
I move to receive the report and adopt the recommendation.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. Any comments from the mover? The seconder? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. The next is confirmation of the agenda. Any changes, additions, or amendments to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Willis. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there any council member which wishes to declare this evening a declaration? Seeing none, we're on to delegations and presentations. And we're looking at Katrina Ferlanto. I knew I wasn't going to get it. Director, General Manager of the CRCA to present a budget presentation. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Yeah, just give 1 second, we'll get it on the screen. Good. Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. I am Katrina Ferlanto, the General Manager of Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority. We go by Cataraqui Conservation. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening on our 2023 operating and capital budget. First, I'd like to speak a little bit about the history of conservation in Ontario. So back in the 1930s, there started to be observations of severe drought, deforestation, and overall mismanagement of natural resources. Moving into the 40s, people started to notice, and they started to lobby their municipalities and their province on what are we going to do about this. So based on a request from the municipalities of the day, the province of Ontario, through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, created the Conservation Authorities Act, and thus created conservation authorities to provide us oversight of protecting natural resources in the province. So under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, the purpose of conservation authorities is to further the conservation, the restoration, and development and management of natural resources. And we do this with the support of our municipalities, and we operate on a watershed scale. So we have multiple municipalities within our jurisdiction, and we look outside of a municipal jurisdiction to make these natural resources choices. We're primarily funded by municipal levy and supported by self-generated funding, as well as grants where possible, and very little from the province. So in terms of the conservation authorities across the province, there are 36. Cataraqui Conservation happens to be one, and we were formed in 1964. So our 60th anniversary is coming up shortly. We were appointed by members of our municipalities and currently have 17 members who sit on our board. I'd like to thank the council for previous board members. Our previous chair was Paul McCulley and did an excellent job in providing much support for the Conservation Authority as well as the township. And I'd like to welcome Councillor Project, as he will be sitting as our vice chair on our board, and we look forward to working with him on making these decisions. Cataraqui Conservation is a very unique area, as you can see on the screen. We have lots of geological features, lots of challenges, and lots of opportunity in order to manage our natural resources. So what value do we provide to our watershed communities? It's multiple, as you can see here on the screen. So it ranges from the protection of water resources to the protection of people and property from natural hazards, to providing technical expertise, learning opportunities, and the conservation of wetland, forests, and wildlife, as well as access to nature, which we found very important the last several years and continue to do so moving forward. What did we do last year? So in terms of our accomplishments that are moving, and I could take a long time to talk about those over the next few minutes, but I summarized a few of them here on the screen and just want to point your attention to a couple that relate to partnerships that we have with Wales Township. So the first being the Wilton Road Dam Safety Study, which is to end at the end of March of this year, and to help us better understand the structure, the needs of the structure, and the maintenance requirements for the structure moving forward. There's also acquisition of updated LiDAR imagery, which is critical for our GIS departments and for our development review services. And we've entered into a partnership with the township, as well as 6 conservation authorities and a plethora of municipalities to achieve this data. And the last that I'll focus on is the initiation of Lake Ontario modeling and floodplain mapping, again to support our development review services and through a partnership with our municipalities along the Lake Ontario shoreline, one of which being Loyalist Township. Just want to thank you for that support and continue to work on achieving some of these necessary deliverables. So in terms of the 2023 budget, there were several influences that went into the decision on how we got to where we are. They're listed here on the screen. For federal and provincial funding, it has been uncertain for the conservation authorities in the last several years, but I'm happy to report that we have received confirmation of funding for many of our programs, such as drinking water source protection and some of our capital investments through different grants and partnerships that we've had with our municipal partners. From an uncontrollable cost perspective, as the township I'm sure is aware, it's been a challenging couple of years and continues to be challenging moving forward. So costs such as insurance and utilities have gone up, and we have had to be able to be resilient and include that within our budget. Over the last several months, we've completed a compensation review. So we've been looking to ensure that we're competitive with our salaries, and we want to be able to retain the skilled staff that we have. So the 2023 budget incorporates a transition of all staff to a new grid based on market rate analysis. We've been working hard on capital asset management. We have several facilities, several infrastructural pieces, and different lands that we need to bring up to the times. And so we will be pulling together different portfolios that we'll be bringing to our board and to council. So within the budget, we wanted to ensure that we have sufficient reserve transfers to help with our capital plan. And lastly, I won't speak too much on legislative changes, but the last few years have brought a bunch for the Conservation Authority, to say the least. And the 2023 budget does not include the majority of those changes. Most of those changes were still in a transition phase and will come into effect in 2024. But we are going to look at those services this year and to look at some of that impact, and then we'll bring forward a new budget if necessary moving into the 2024 fiscal year. So within your package, you would have received the 2023 budget and business work plan. I encourage council members and others who are interested in the roles and responsibilities of Conservation Authority to read the document. It outlines our different initiatives, our plans for the year, speaks about our budget approval process, as well as is a transparent way of understanding some of the changes through the Conservation Authorities Act and some of the different agreements we will need to move forward with our services. So in terms of the actual operating budget, our 2023 budget is just over $5.87 million and addresses the expenses and efficiencies of some of those challenges that I mentioned in the previous slide. One of the pieces in our budget includes new funding partners. It includes that transition to the compensation framework and a transition to a new administration facility. So for those of you who may not be aware, we have entered into a partnership with Frontenac County to move our administrative facility. They're in the middle of constructing their new facility this year, and we're hoping to be completed by the end of the year. So Cataraqui Conservation will be leasing a space from them for the next 20 years. We then have a capital forecast from 2023 to 2032, and this is a fully funded forecast over the next 10 years. And what that means is it's based primarily on our reserves. So the reserves that we have, the grants that we seek, and the partnerships that we made will address these projects that are listed within that forecast. We have projects outside of this forecast, and that's where that long-term asset management plan comes in place, which we are working on and will continue to work with our municipalities to discuss. We have about 151 projects proposed, as you can see here on the screen, with several significant projects such as signage on our conservation areas, which are due to completion at the end of this year. So in terms of the levies, we have 3 specific levies that you see here listed on the screen. The first is the general levy, and we tried to keep an increase that was quite modest to address the challenges that we have. So an overall increase of 4.7%, which was an approved direction by our board last year. We then have special levies for properties and special levies for water control structures, as you can see here on the screen. For Loyalist Township, the properties would include Parrots Bay Conservation Area as well as Elma Woods Conservation Area. And an example of the water control structures would be the Wilton Brook Dam. So if you take the general levy and you break it down, the process works like this. So the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry provides us with growth assessment data from the year prior, and then takes that information and provides an apportionment of how much of a municipality is within the watershed of the Conservation Authority. Using that data, we come up with the apportionment value and then use that to multiply it with our general levy total to get the different breakdown between our participating municipalities, which you see here on the screen. The red box outlines Loyalist Township's contribution. And as I mentioned earlier, although the increase of general levy is about 4.7% for the organization, it only ends up being just over 3 for Loyalist Township based on that apportionment breakdown. So just to summarize, there are general levies and special levies to support the organization. Loyalist Township's contribution are listed here on the screen. So many municipalities within our watershed have asked for a multi-year forecast to help with planning and understanding some of the challenges that the Conservation Authority is going to address over the next few years. So this is the forecast that we have put forward. It has been constant the last couple of years, and I'm pleased to say that we have met these targets and hope to continue meeting these targets moving forward. You'll see that under the special levy for water control structures, it's slowly increasing over time. And that's because there are some infrastructure deficits there that we need to address. We'll have to do some studies, we'll have to do some maintenance and some capital projects, and our reserves are inadequate at the moment. It's not a sustainable process. So we are working with our municipalities to determine how do we increase those reserves, how do we plan together, find efficiencies, and how do we apply to grants to support some of the work that we need to do. So in terms of looking ahead, the implementation of the Conservation Authorities Act regulations is going to be one of our main objectives moving into 2023. So I spoke a little bit about our programs and services, and so those have been redefined in some of the regulations that were brought forward. Back in 2021, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks at the time was overseeing conservation authorities and put forward 2 phases of amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act. Phase 1 was to redefine our programs, whereby some programs require municipal agreements in order to move forward. So we're moving forward with your staff to discuss what those agreements look like, and I would be seeking council endorsement in July of 2023 to move forward with those services in 2024. Phase 2 of the amendments included transparency of the budget process, documents such as a fee policy, and an updating of the website. And I'm happy to report that Cataraqui Conservation is completely compliant with phase 2 of those amendments. The third thing that has come into place, as I'm sure you're aware, is Bill 23, so the More Homes Built Faster Act. And as of January 1st of this year, there were some changes that impacted the service delivery of some of the programs for Cataraqui Conservation. Primarily, it was the plan review function, specifically related to natural heritage. So we've been moving forward when speaking with your senior team, as well as your planners across the different counties, and I've talked about how do we work together to ensure business continuity for development review and ensure that that natural heritage component is captured and captured well, so that we can provide that resiliency to the community moving forward. I mentioned a long-term asset management strategy, so I won't get into too much detail there. And then lastly, what I wanted to mention is this year is our 40th anniversary of Maple Madness. So many of you may be familiar with that program. It's basically a celebration of all things maple syrup. So I'd like to invite council and anyone who is interested to our 40th anniversary. It is being held throughout the month of March, all 3 weekends, including March break. Registration is required and will be online soon. And if you'd like to volunteer or like to get a sense of what the community is like, we encourage you to come out. Please reach out and we'll find a job for you, I promise. Whether it's flipping pancakes, talking to residents, or just getting a better understanding of what Cataraqui Conservation does. And with that, I'll say thank you again for the opportunity to present to council and for all your support in the last couple of years and for the projects moving forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Council, do we have any questions this evening? Councillor Parks.
Thank you very much for the presentation through your, Mr. Mayor.
Over the last few years, this is my second term on council. We've talked about the compensation review as it's been coming. Is this now just being implemented, or has there been one done in the last couple of years? I just wondered if it was delayed due to COVID.
Sure, good question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So we completed our first compensation review in 2017, and we're still in the process of implementing that. But we wanted to ensure that we had current data and we had more direction to have a 5-year update. So the compensation review that I've been speaking to is a recent update that we completed at the end of 2022. And I've just started to implement a transition to that new grid in January of this year. So it'll be a phased in process. It's not an immediate transfer, but we wanted to start the process sooner rather than later.
Council, any other questions? Councillor Ennis.
For you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the delegation. Just on the levy breakdown between the municipalities, I didn't catch how is it broken down between each municipality?
Sure, good question, and for you, Mr. Mayor. So we receive an apportionment breakdown from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. So they look at the growth assessment data for municipalities based on the previous year. They take that and they look at the percentage of land that resides within the watershed of our conservation authority, do some quick math, and then give us some percentages. We take those percentages, multiply them by our budget, and that's how we apportion.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I have one, and it's a question that I hear in the public, and I was on the CRCA for a short stint. But I'd like to ask the question on behalf of the public so that they can hear it, since this is on YouTube afterwards. One of the items that keeps coming up in our township is the dam, the County Road 6 dam here. The original purpose for the dam being there is not, the purpose doesn't exist anymore, but the dam does. So people always question, why is it still there? And can it just simply be removed and open the waterway back up to the way it was before? And of course, save the maintenance and capital costs on it.
Good question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So we are continually having that conversation internally, and as you can imagine, although the original purpose of the dam has changed, the environment around the dam has also changed. So should we do anything major to that particular structure, you would impact the habitat, you would impact the recreational use of the upland water sources. And we would have to do a study to determine how hydraulically it would impact the overall water level of the Milpitas Creek system. So we've been talking about doing a study like that internally. Those studies would be expensive. So what we've done is we've broken it down to look at how do we maintain the dam efficiently as it is right now, which is the study that we're looking at in terms of the health and safety aspects and the capital maintenance. And then the next phase would be to work with the township staff to talk about the future of the structure before any significant costs are required.
Great, thank you. I'll just go back to council for any questions? Seeing none, we could entertain a motion. Deputy Mayor.
I move to receive the presentation with thanks.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Broderick. Any comments from the mover?
Yes, thank you, Katrina, for that presentation. I appreciated you in particular mentioning at the beginning a bit of that history of conservation authorities and why we have them. I think it reminds us of a time when mismanaged and unmanaged natural resources result in deleterious and disastrous natural consequences for communities. It's my prerogative as a politician to state my emphatic opinion, which is that the narrative of overinflated mandates for conservation authorities is subterfuge, and it's to engage in undermining the essential arm's length environmental protection that CAs provide in order to facilitate unbridled and unrestricted development in this province. Perhaps ironically, though, the cost-effective peer review services that CAs provide are vital to responsible and timely growth and development. Loyalist enjoys and has historically enjoyed a very positive and effective working relationship with CRCA in particular, and I am personally committed to sustaining and strengthening that relationship moving forward under whatever legislative conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder, any comments?
Second time I've seen this presentation, it gets better and it gets shorter.
That's strategic.
Yes, no, I just as a first-time member, I'm learning a lot, and I look forward to the next, I think it's 4 years I'm on the committee. So thanks for your work and all the staff too.
Thank you. Any other members have comments? Seeing none, I'm just going to mention a couple of things. You'd mentioned our previous Representative Paul McCauley. And I agree, he brought a wealth of knowledge and he was a very strong member, I believe, on the CRCA and did a lot of really great work for our community, but in general, the whole watershed. And for me personally, I really appreciate the efforts, the work that he put into it. It was great. And also just to thank the CRCA, the conversations that I have with staff internally. It's great that we are able to still be very collaborative and working forward through all of these changes that the deputy quite eloquently brought to our attention again. And it's great that we can work together, work through the changes and make sure that the whole watershed succeeds. So with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise a hand. It is passed. Thank you. Thank you very much. And the next delegation is the Loyalist Family Health Team. It's going to do a presentation. And we have Dr. McKinnon, Dr. Gazendam, and Dr. Nyman. Thank you. Please proceed.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I just have to reach out to you, or can I do something here to change the slides?
There is a, there's a small little. Advance.
So first of all, I'll just give you a little background as to who we are. I'm Laura McKinnon, this is Suzanne Noon and Mary Kate Gazendam. We represent the Doctors of Amherst View Family Health Organization, and it's the physician group for the family health team, Loyalist. There's lots of Bridge Boulevard, which you well know our new building there. And just to give you a bit of background about the clinic, it was established on Manitou Crescent many years ago. And then in 2011, we decided we would try to set up a family health team in the hopes that we would be able to pass our practices on to other physicians, because that was it's a very desirable place to work. And it was the last round of family health teams that was set up, that was allowed by the government at that time. What the team is it's a group of physicians that work with other medical professionals. So we have a social worker, an occupational therapist, a dietitian, a bunch of nursing staff, and then admin staff. And all together in the building, other than the pharmacy, there's about 30 of us associated with the team. And the responsibility of it is led by the physician-led board. And we've worked with the township a lot in the past, and we've really enjoyed our collaborative efforts. We've worked on vaccine clinics, we've worked on exercise programs, we have an aging well at home program that we're doing for the community, and we continue to look for ways to partnership as well. And we're here to ask for your help in our effort to attract new physicians to maintain the viability of our clinic and the building. I don't need to tell you this, but this is just a quick population best estimate of it's actually Lennox and Addington. It gets cut off a little bit, but just to point out that the population is growing and there's a lot of people over 65, especially in Bath, there's 41% of people over 65 years of age, which means our healthcare needs are growing. And this is a brief overview of what clinics exist in Lennox and Addington. In Amherst View, there's our clinic, which has 8 physicians, 4 of whom are wanting to retire in the next few years. 2 as soon as they can find replacements, and the other 2 in the next few years. There are a couple other family practices in Amherst View specifically, but they're not associated with our team. And I know one of them doesn't want to retire as well. And the other thing to point out on the slide is that there's all the other clinics in Lennox and Addington are also having retiring doctors. There's a lot of physicians in Kingston retiring. There's
apparently 21,000 people in Kingston without a family doctor at the moment. And then, so that's, we need family doctors, and then who's out there? Who's out there that we can hire or to come to take over our practice? They did a study a few years ago, Health Force Ontario, of incoming residents, family medicine residents, to find out what they want to do when they complete residency. And only 15% of those were planning on starting a family practice after they graduate. A lot of them will do a third year, where they get extra training in geriatrics or emergency medicine or anesthesia. Some of whom come back and have part-time family medicine practices, but some of whom just do that specialty. So they don't ever set up. So basically the supply is limited. Nice thing about where we are, this is where they wanted to practice, was 35% in smaller cities, 24% in urban areas. I kind of think we hit all of them, and 22% were rural. This is like the perfect place because we can stay where all three of them really. What they're looking for, so they also ask, what are you looking for in a practice? So joining a family health organization, so that's a team of doctors like we have. Further down, there's affiliating with a family health team, which we are. So we have both of those, and co-locating with physician colleagues. So all three of those are available in our practice. There's a few things on there that we have no control over, like proximity to family and spousal and family employment opportunities, and having additional work outside clinical practice. The final one that we're hoping you can help us with is financial incentives, because and that was like 50% of people were looking for that at that time. I think that's actually gone up because it's becoming the norm. And there's a lot of places that have financial incentives. And why are we asking for financial incentives, and why are townships and communities doing this? It's actually a proven way to attract new physicians. Kingston's managed to successfully recruit 9 physicians since their program began a few years ago, and I think they've got 3 or 4 more coming for this year, this upcoming spring. Napanee had success. Prince Edward County and Quinte have also had incentives and have had success. And you may wonder why someone with a really good income needs extra money from a municipality to come and start work. But a lot of these people are graduating in their late 20s, early 30s with debt of $150,000 to $200,000 just of student debt. And they do find that this works because once a physician's here for 5 years, then they're unlikely to leave. They put down roots, their kids are settled, their families more settled, and they do tend to stay. And to keep in mind that there's no ongoing cost to the township to support the professionals once this incentives are done. This is just to let you know that we've been working hard to try to recruit. So we're not just here asking you to help us. Our whole team was set up, in fact, to help ensure the continuity of our practices, and that we would be able to pass them on to somebody. We've got a state-of-the-art medical office, a well-run team of interdisciplinary professionals. That's what everybody is looking for. There's really few opportunities as good as this one in the area. We've got a robust volunteer recruiting committee, which we're on, and there's a few more of us. We have reached out on ads, social media, word of mouth. We've been meeting with Queen's University residents who are planning on staying in the area. And the physician recruiter in Kingston has actually been helping us in our efforts, mostly with Dr. Nangum here. We have asked them for funding, but they have declined. But they do help sort of connect us to people that might be interested in staying. And in fact, we do have one potential candidate for this year who would be willing to come, but she won't come if we can't match the City of Kingston incentives. So what are we looking for? I'm just going to give you an idea of what the surrounding area has in terms of financial incentives. City of Kingston, what they're specifically doing is $100,000 over 5 years for a full practice, which is considered 1,000 patients. It can be prorated for a smaller practice. So if you only take on 500 patients, then you get $50,000. So that would be $20,000 a year for the full practice. Napanee has the same financial incentives. Interestingly, they have a rider in their agreement that if you take on a practice, then you'll take on whoever's in that practice. But if you take on new patients, they have to be from that area. So from Napanee area. So that would be something to consider the rider. Prince Edward County has the same financial incentives. Belleville actually is $150,000 over 5 years. And I'm not going on here, but I don't think they have incentives. I was trying to get more information, but they haven't. But that's a story that's on there. I have to add too, like Kingston, Prince Edward County, Quincy, they all have full-time recruiters. So they have people that are, this is what they do for a living. They try to recruit. For us, it's just us. So in summary, we're in a dire situation regarding position recruitment. We're a successful employer in the area, and to remain viable and to remain open, we're going to need to attract some positions. We have everything the professional attributes new positions are looking for. And if we can get these financial incentives, then it's going to level the playing field. So at least we're going to be able to talk to people, because right now they're not going to talk to us. They can work 5 kilometers down the road to make $20,000 more a year for 5 years. And we would love to continue our partnership with the council and the township. So thank you for having us.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the delegation?
Through you,
Councilor
Mr.
Prager.
Mayor, just, I think it was the third last slide, you talked about one, was that position, we talking about a recruiter that wouldn't come here or a doctor? In that,
It was a doctor.
Doctor,
position,
okay.
Yes.
thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. McKinnon. If you wouldn't mind, for the benefit of council and for, our audience, describing, again, in a little bit more detail, you did cover it in one of your slides, but describing in a little more detail what the advantages are to the community in retaining a family health team, in particular.
Sure. So the Loyalist Family Health Team as.
Sorry, could you step up to the
Oh, sure.
the mic
Loyalist
there?
Family Health Team, as described by Dr. McKinnon, is an interdisciplinary team that serves patients in many ways. So we have the ability to have a nurse practitioner. We have nurses who run diabetes clinics. We have an OT that helps with our aging while at home. So the breadth of the care that we can give actually expands what each family physician can do in terms of caring for people. So I may have 1,700 patients, but I couldn't do that without these people to help. So it allows us to have bigger practices, expands the scope of these interdisciplinary health professionals, making it a really appealing place to work as well. So we're a great employer, obviously, it's a beautiful place to work and they're well-paying jobs. Each of the family physicians that works there runs their own small business as well, right? We're not funded by the team. So each of us hires our own staff as well. So that is another advantage, I think. Does that answer the question?
Please proceed.
And if I may follow up, Dr. Gazim, again, if you could clarify for everyone's benefit that the family health team is constituted by the existence of the family health organization, which are the doctors. So this isn't something that is, funded on its own vis-a-vis the province. Without the family physicians there constituting the family health organization, there wouldn't be the family health team.
That's right. So in order to apply for a family health team back in 2010, we had to be a family health organization because it requires a sponsoring body of physicians. And we did that. So we set up a family health organization, which is the group of doctors, and then we applied to the province to bring a family health team to Amherst-U. And the board is constituted by physicians. So yeah, they can't exist without us.
Councilor Ennis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a particular number of either roster patients or physicians that are needed in order to maintain the fit funding?
Well, that's a tricky question, right? Because we would pay for the majority of the rent and of the expenses. The physicians would for the building, whereas the fit would pay a much smaller proportion. In terms of how big a phone needs to be, that's changed. It used to be 3 to 6. I think it lacks viability under 6 now. But for us to continue to rent the building, we need a critical mass as well. And also the patients, right? So we, if any physician leaves, and they have 1,500 patients, without a family doctor and no longer.
I meant to add one thing. So there's 8 of us right now. We actually have room for 9. So we hopefully, I mean, in an ideal world, we would bring in 5 new positions over the next few years. That's the goal.
Counselor Willis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that. You mentioned that 4 doctors are likely to be retiring. So what would the net number of new patients be to your practice? If you're able to fill that extra position?
Oh, well, first of all, of course, the 4 physicians who are retiring have the larger practices. So probably that would be 6,000 patients that would be without doctors if we didn't have any replacement. So when you take the younger physicians, because medical care is more complex now, they tend not to take on quite as many. So it would be difficult to see, it would be ideal if they could take on new patients as well, but we might not be able to find people willing to take big practices. So, I mean, if you can get them to just take the existing ones, that would be lucky, but the hope was to get enough that want to take on biggest practices that you would be able to take more.
Counselor Boudreaux.
Excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, you say there's potential of losing 6,000 people losing their patients. And you mentioned Kingston's numbers. Do you have a more loyalist centric kind of number of who may be out there who still doesn't have a doctor currently? I'm just curious, just because you cited Kingston's numbers and everything like that, and you're talking about what you may be losing, which is catastrophic. That's a third of a municipality. So yes.
Yeah, so we don't have the exact numbers for loyalists, no, but I think we always look at this as a whole region because people go to see doctors in Kingston people come to see doctors in Amherst, again, not Cueva. I mean, so it's a regional thing that we're looking at. And I think that's all we can say is that there's just a dire need for family doctors in the region, and we're the only area that doesn't have the incentive money that everybody else in the region has. So there's very little incentive to come to our clinic. Yeah.
Counselor Parks.
Thank you. Through the mayor, just to comment more than anything, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I know for a fact, just to talk to Councilor Bruder's point, there's 4 doctors in Napanee retiring in the next 2 months too, and 1 in Bath. So that's going to highly impact for Livingston County too. So the incentives are already in place in Napanee. So that's going to pose some challenges.
Thank you.
I will say that we've been attending the City of Kingston recruitment sessions and have managed to encourage people to come and visit us in Amherstview, and they are always impressed and always quite sort of happy with the way that our clinic is run and sort of the practice there, and would come, and especially the specific one, she will come if we could match the funding that the city provides.
Thank you. And Councilor Prager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a few comments. I like the fact that you've obviously got a transition plan where, you know, you're looking maybe a few years ahead. And I know that personally, I'm in that 60 to 65 category where my doctor is already given notice and she's not on your team, that she'll be leaving. And again, appreciate things like the vaccine clinics. Those are great, just to drive up and drop your shoulder and get a needle. And I think the one thing that, and excuse my ignorance on the family health team, but I think what I'm hearing, it's very collaborative and it supports younger doctors who may be, you know, you in any profession, you learn from the people you work with, and it sounds like you've got a very collaborative group there. And I also like the fact that, you know, I think the idea of a rider would be good, that, you know, you service where you live or where you work. Just a general question on the financial incentives. Is that strictly a salary? Is it a bonus to come? Like how in other areas maybe, or maybe in the past with the health team, how have you geared any kind of financial incentives, or how would you look at that?
I think they just get like once a year, they'll get a $20,000 check from whoever's providing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you very much for bringing this forward. I appreciate it. With the inquiries that I've been receiving lately from different areas within the township, I appreciate having this information. Thank you.
Thank you.
So council, Deputy Mayor.
Through your worship, I would move to receive the presentation and direct staff to return to council with a report on possible funding options and agreement proposals for the initiation of a loyalist physician recruitment program in partnership with the Loyalist Family Health Team.
So moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Parks. Deputy, do you wish to speak to it?
I think my thanks to the presenters. I think all the salient points were covered. We've just fought an election, all of us, and it's something we hear at the door. It's very obvious that we are in a time of health crises generally, but primary care is a particularly acute one, since primary care is primary, literally. And I think in Loyalist, we have a real gem with the Loyalist Family Health Team. Again, I thank the presenters for articulating why that is. And I think that the opportunity we have here to, even though, as we all know, this is not typically in the wheelhouse of municipal government, I think as elected representatives, we are occasionally called upon to grasp larger challenges that may exceed the norm. And I dare say this is one of them.
Thank you. Seconder, any comments?
No.
Any comments from the remaining council? Councillor Broderick.
I would support the deputy mayor's motion. We want Loyalist to be a place that people come to, and without doctors, you're really the shadow of other places. You're not establishing your own community. And I go back, I don't think many of you around this table go back to the days when Dr. James started his I think it's 5 Manitou or 6, and he was my doctor from the time I was 14 or 15 till almost when I got married. So, that's the kind of commitment I think these doctors are offering. And I think that anything we can do to encourage, whether it be 5, 6, whatever number of doctors to come here, I think the township needs to take a part in that process to encourage people to come here, whether it's through financial incentives or any other incentives that can be offered.
Thank you. Other Councillor Ennis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting the motion as well. I think it's but with the existing incentives both to the east and the west of us, it's to have an even playing field. It's something we need to look at. I would just encourage staff. I would be interested to see the report if this motion passes, to look at what if there's other innovative things that are happening in other municipalities across Ontario in terms of primary care recruitment and providing increased primary care at local municipal level.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'm going to share a couple of my thoughts. I've never been shy about in the past taking the stand that I believe this was not a municipal issue to deal with, and so I adamantly dug my heels in and did not take part in the municipality, or was not agreeable to the municipality going down this path. I still am a firm believer, and I'm going to say it a little more bluntly than what the deputy said eloquently, is that I still do believe it's a provincial responsibility with the federal government's assistance and input. But having said that, our healthcare is very dire now, and it's been illustrated here locally, and Councillor Parks with the number of doctors that are retiring locally in other locations. And we have far too many of our residents and the residents in our general area, as you say, that have no health care, and they cannot get the medications and the assistance that they need to be able to live at home and live a fulfilled life. So, of course, now here we sit, and I have egg on my face because now I'm going to support this motion, because really it's come down to the point where we have no choice. The inaction has downloaded it to the province or to the municipality to a certain extent, and maybe that's not a very politically correct way to put it, but that's me. So I believe we do need to look into this. We need to review all of our options, and we need to move forward. Hopefully in partnership with the township or with the province, but we need to look at all of our options. And it's amazing the number of times that I've been approached, as I alluded to, for all healthcare, whether it's doctors, nurse practitioners, or nurses. There's shortages in every one of those fields, as well as the PSWs in the workforce. So I don't see any choice but that we do need to enter the arena, and we have to try to start finding out what we can do to help. Thank you. So before I go back to the mover, I'm just going to ask for clarification on the motion. Was it strictly for physicians or for the healthcare providers, which may include other levels such as nurse practitioners or nurses, which could support the doctors in this?
It was just for physician recruitment at this point, but I'm open to amendment.
Does somebody wish to make a friendly amendment, or do I step down? Which would be tough because the deputy is the one that made the motion. I would like to see it include all of them, just so that the door is wide open and we can make a full assessment on everything. Councillor Budrich.
I was just bringing reference that the second.
Sorry.
Can I make the friendly amendment? Because I seconded the motion.
Yes, she can, right? Yes.
All right, I'm gonna kick out this. I would offer a friendly amendment to the motion to include other sources of nursing staff, or I'm not sure what the language would be, to accommodate the recruitment for physicians also, because I think there is a need for that also, to support the doctors.
Thank you. Is that friendly to the mover?
Yep, I've tried to add that in.
It's in there? Okay.
If I can reread the motion.
What's the part that was just added that
With
you?
well, so I have, through you, your worship, I have said possible funding options and agreement proposals for the initiation of a Loyalist Township physician recruitment program and additional healthcare provisions in partnership with Loyalist Family Health Team.
Would let them know if that's.
Yeah, I think it would need to be a little bit more specific, and like I guess what I don't necessarily want to see is like OTs and physiotherapists. There's enough of those available, so I don't know if it would be. I don't know how to get that definition in to be nursing staff.
Maybe they consider. Just list them.
Just put nursing staff there instead of healthcare provision.
That
Does that work?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I think that covers what I was thinking.
Physician recruitment program and additional nursing staff.
Okay, thank you. So that's friendly. Friendly with the seconder? Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll come back to the mover. Any final comments? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. Councillor Prater.
Through you, just a general question. What I'm hearing over here is there may be a doctor available at present that might want to come here. I'm just wondering if staff could be directed to have a tight timeline on this, that we have something to show the health team that yes, we have this in place and we'd be happy to. I know that's a tough one, but
First, we'd have to figure out which staff member it goes to.
Or
let's see, how about if we request a timeline to be brought back to council at the next meeting for receiving the report? Does that work for staff? Okay, and that way it'll be a definite one. that we can
Or I
all
was
agree
also
on.
gonna suggest maybe, if the staff want to take a longer time, we have maybe a dual process where we make a motion right now for short term for a year and then look at a longer term so we can get somebody in place.
I
I
think,
may be overthinking this, but
I think if it's not the long term,
no, I know they are, but I hate to think there's a doctor out there that would come here if it's gonna take.
so if I could just inquire to staff, when the report comes back, we'll at the next meeting, we'll find out what timeline we're looking at for it. And it could be a two-part where this to mimic the others, this is what we could do and be able to hopefully recruit, and then a long-term, if there's other options and solutions, they would be able to come as well at a later date. Does that work?
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, through you, so you would like us to report back on February 27th council meeting?
Reply back as to what timeline we'd be looking at for a full report to come back. Not the report itself. We just don't, that's not near enough time.
We can do that.
Okay. I wasn't clear. Does that,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay,
Do something.
Hmm?
Did the county not do a report on this?
yeah, I'll come back in a minute. Okay, so with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Thank you for bringing this forward. The next item is the adoption of the agenda, or of the minutes, my apologies. Confirmation of the minutes of the third session of the regular council, January 9th, 2023. Any errors or omissions noted? Could we have a motion to adopt? Counselor Boudrick, seconded by Counselor Parks. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Confirmation of the minutes of the special meeting, January 16th, 2023. Any errors or omissions noted? Saying none,
There is an omission or an error.
okay. Please proceed.
I believe on the meeting, it refers to Mayor Brzee in the second last line. Don't think that was the case. And I don't think Mr. Silver was present for that meeting.
Council meeting?
No, that's the
Special?
special council meeting.
Oh, yes.
Another
Signature.
note,
Okay,
Oh, this.
Yeah. No.
Sorry,
Signature.
just a note, also, our former director / treasurer, Stephen Dickey, was not there as he's been retired for a while.
okay. Those items noted, very good. So could we have a motion to adopt as amended with those changes? Counselor Broderick, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Anything further from council? Seeing none, call a question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Summer student pre-budget approval. Is there any additional information that staff have or wish to provide at this time? Seeing none, council, Deputy Mayor.
I move to receive and adopt recommendation number 1.
So moved, seconded by Counselor Parks. Mover, any comments? Seconder?
No.
Anyone else? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Courageous Companions advertising request. Any further comments? None from staff? Thank you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, we have a recommendation with an or in it. And what would council's wishes be? Councilor Boudreaux.
Question for staff, is this something we've supported in the past?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I believe we supported with the business card size in the past. Councillor Boothby.
Motion to follow up again and support with business card size, version.
That version of the advertisement. So moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Willis. Any comments from the mover? Seconder? Anyone else? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? There is a hand. Motion is passed. Bath Canada Day fireworks. Any further comments from staff? None? Any questions from council? None? Councillor Willis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. The absence of fireworks in Bath last year was controversial and got a lot of attention on Facebook. And I'm just wondering if, having appeared on the agenda on Thursday, if we've really given the people of Bath time to understand that this is being considered today and come and speak to it if they have a strong concern.
Well, it's kind of been going around for a while now, so I kind of thought that, is there a staff member that it's just been followed this normal process, right? Where it's the agendas, they have their meetings and it's coming forward now. Okay. So just the standard process, nothing special from what I can see.
And so the people in the community would be aware of it.
I'm assuming they would.
Not really.
No? Okay.
I doubt it.
Possibly not. But
I
Councillor
think
Parks?
what happened last year was that it was the notification that it wasn't happening was late, and it did create a lot of dissatisfaction, not only with the village, but people in the village, but also with people in other areas around. So yeah, I definitely had that concern too. I share that concern with Councillor Willis.
so if I may, just for clarification, is your concern that with us addressing this tonight, or just that once it is addressed, there would be, we'd make sure that more notice was given so that the residents knew what to expect for this year?
Speaking for myself, I would say my concern is addressing it tonight and asking perhaps that we defer it to give people in Bath time to come and speak to it if they do feel strongly.
So to do a deferral, we need to provide a timeline and a requirement. So would you be looking for it to be deferred until the next meeting, next regular council meeting? Just so that just to give people more time to know, to be aware that it's coming. That would be it. That meets the requirements. Thank you. Not to put words in your mouth, but any other questions from Councillor Bradbury?
Again, just a general, so.
Is it a question?
I don't know if it's a question, but
Can you word it in a question?
what's the role of Bath Canada Day Subcommittee in all this, given that they had a meeting on November 9th that was attended by the CEO/fire chief, where pretty well laid out where we at this year with it. I'm just wondering, what is the role of the Bath Canada Day Committee? Like, is it our role to say what's on their thing or not? Because it's fairly clear that the chief has outlined any issues that sort of precluded from happening. No trained staff, liability, do not have the resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just wondering, how does I understand what Councillor Willis is saying, that, there's going to be a pocket, maybe don't know what's going on, but they do have a committee that should be maybe, and again, maybe somebody else has thoughts on that.
So if I may go to the deputy CAO or whoever he deems best to answer that.
Through your worship to Councillor Broderick, this has been ongoing for a number of years, and I was asked to attend the Canada Day Committee in November. In 2019, we told the candidate committee that the fire department, we only ever had one person that was licensed to shoot fireworks, and he retired from the fire department. So he was employed by a contractor, and the contractor was more than willing to provide the shoot to the Bath Canada Day in the area. But I had to caution them that the area behind the Bath Fire Hall might not have been big enough for the shoot. We always took extra precautions and took on some of the liability, but with the houses continuing to encroach at the back of the fire hall, that area was becoming much too small for the shoot we did, which included 6-inch mortar. So they were given some options. One is the shoot could be reduced to the size of the mortar, or they could be relocated. But unfortunately, the fire department no longer had someone with the supervisor ticket to discharge the fireworks on our behalf. Our insurance company also had looked at it. The fact is that the municipality was buying fireworks, the municipality was shooting fireworks, and the municipality was shooting fireworks from their property, which was a bit of an issue. They always like 2 insurance companies when these things get insured. So going to an outside contractor definitely made sense. Those options were given to the Bath Canada Day Committee in 2019. They decided not to do it in that year. We gave those same options to the committee this year, and they decided between that and the environmental impact that they weren't going to do fireworks. So unfortunately, the fire department doesn't have trained supervisory staff, and the amount of volunteer hours it takes. So we would have 6 or 8 firefighters on the ground from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, setting it up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, cleaning up the site and making sure there was no debris, no fires, no nothing after the site, mainly because a lot of the debris would drop into the backyards of people within the Loyalist Golf Course community because of the proximity to the houses. So it was a concern for us. So nobody ever told them they couldn't have fireworks. We just made them aware that they had to look at another option to have fireworks. So.
Thank you. Councillor Parks?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy CAO. A lot of the confusion last year was because Bath wasn't able to have it, but there was fireworks on Amherst Island that were sanctioned by fire department. This is the story that was told, right? I don't know what the full story is because you get conflicting information. So my understanding, it was done on township property on the island and done by the fire department on the island. So if you can provide clarification, that'd be great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Parks, the discharge on the island was done by the same contractor who I had provided the name for to do the Bath Canada Day shoot. One of the ex-firefighters actually did the shoot because although he's no longer with the fire department, he shot under the contractor's license, and a couple of the firefighters went over and helped them. The shoot was not allowed to be discharged from the school property where it had been for years, because the Limestone District School Board won't allow fireworks on their property. So it was discharged from the adjacent lot, which is township property, but leased to Topsy Farms. So it was Topsy Farms because they agreed to cut the hay so that the shoot could be done. So the only thing the fire department did was ensure the hay was cut so there wouldn't be a fire. But it was, although it was township property, that property is leased annually to Topsy Farms for hay production. And the sanctioning of fire department events like that, we don't sanction them. If we get an application in and they meet all the criteria, we approve it. So they had the personnel and they had the site and they had the distances. So we have no choice but to approve it. But it wasn't done by the fire department, that's for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation before us. Or there can be a motion to defer with the criteria if that's so wish. Do we have a mover? Councillor
I'd
Pryor.
make a motion that council support the joint committee and staff recommendations to exclude a fireworks display at the Bath Canada Day event moving forward and through township social media. Communicate this to the residents of Bath.
So moved. Seconded, do we have a seconder for that? Call a second time, do we have a seconder for the motion? Call a third time,
I'll
Final?
second it for discussion.
seconded for discussion by the deputy. Councillor Broderick, any comments?
More of the same that the chief was saying that, you know, so there hasn't been one since 2019. So we're now a number of years down the road, and that maybe it's time to move on to other activities. The fact that I think what happens is we, in general, stretch our resources so thin that as people retire, that maybe there's opportunities for other things. I guess my sort of in that motion is, if you defer it for another month, where are we going to be in a month? Are we going to have a, you know, is it going back to staff, et cetera? We're now in, we're in February. I would imagine it takes a bit of planning to put something like this together, but anyways, that's a brief thought on that.
Thank you. Seconder, any comment?
I'm interested to hear what other colleagues have to say.
Councillor Broderick.
Since this is open for discussion, a quick question for the mover. Would this sunset this forever, or would this be able to be discussed again if a contractor came in with proper insurance and everything that they did bring in to set that up? Just curious on your thoughts on that, just because on the island, they did what the deputy CEO / fire chief kind of had recommended to these people this year, giving them that opportunity. I mean, this year it could be out because they may not want to do that, as he's stated. I'm just curious if moving forward.
If I may, just before you start, just for clarification from staff, the motion is that council support the joint subcommittee and staff recommendations to exclude the fireworks. Because we're just supporting that, if the subcommittee came back and said, we have solved the location and the person to fire them and met all the requirements, and it met the requirements, it would be approved again. Am I correct? Yes.
Okay.
So basically, this only stands until such time as the Bath Canada Day committee wishes to bring them back or not. So,
And I'm fine with that. That's in there. It's just the motion was a little bit different than the motion as written, so that's why I was asking.
Is that what your intent was, Councillor Prada?
My only intent was to support what the Bath Canada Day Committee had presented, and if in another year they come back, fine, you know, that's as politicians, we have to adapt to the times, right? And if there's foundationally a pretty solid case, as the fire chief has said, great.
Councillor Willis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy CAO. Would a private organization or entity be precluded from coming forward with a fireworks display on July 1st that met all of the criteria? Does it necessarily have to be the Bath Canada Day committee that would sponsor a fireworks display?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Willis, anyone or any organization can present an application to discharge fireworks, as long as they meet the criteria and they have the proper insurance and they're licensed properly, then we have no really reason to deny it. The only thing that might change that was if we were in a total burn ban. There might be extra precautions, but yeah, we probably get 4 or 5 applications a year from different people. We've had them from people that are doing weddings or having anniversaries, just having a party that want to put on these commercial shoots. And as long as they meet the criteria, we will approve it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Ennis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm inclined to support the recommendation of the Emergency Services Department and of the Bath Candidate Subcommittee and support Councilor Broderick's motion with the understanding that if the subcommittee finds a workable solution and wants to present that back to council, we can entertain that at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Go back to the mover. Any final comments?
No, sir.
I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Opposed? Abstain? Motion is passed. Use of electronic message boards at ferry docks. I'll just ask staff, is there any additional information that is not in the report that you wish to share? Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? Seeing none, you have a question?
I have a question, and it was actually, I wanted to ask it during our open table to Mr. Corkery, actually. Is that something I can do?
Not according to the procedural
Okay,
bylaw, no.
then I can't.
Okay,
So I can ask staff then, if
Yes.
it's possible.
Please do.
If this was to go forward, is there a number or let's say an ideal number of messages that community could put in there or would be looking to put in there and still have our municipal messages on a frequent enough cycle that what we're trying to say is municipality gets across as well as the community? Have they come to staff to ask for anything specific?
That has not been asked or identified.
Okay.
I don't have a set number in mind.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
any other questions? Seeing none, we have the report with the recommendation before us. How does staff, or how does council wish to proceed? Councilor Parks.
Thank you. I would move to receive the report and adopt recommendation number 2.
So moved. Do we have a seconder? Councilor Willis, mover, wish to speak to it?
Yes, actually, with talking with Councillor Willis earlier, it was my understanding that in the past, when messages were posted up, they still had to be approved by or reviewed by staff anyways. And I think it's important to continue that process to make sure that the information that's out there is relayed in the same fashion.
Seconder, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a discussion on the island over the weekend. And there was, I would say 50% of people saying social media is enough, but those happen to be the people on social media. I did hear directly from the Men's Society, the Women's Institute, and spoke with several members of St. Paul's that do a lot of the activities. And what was pointed out is many of our seniors are not on social media and don't get the messaging when there's community events. So I would strongly support being able to use the signboards with the same type of rules and regulations that we had in the past. So thank you to the mover.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Boudreau.
I'd like to support this as well. And back to the question I had is if staff is controlling it, they can make sure our message is trying to get out there as well as the message for all community groups on the island, which definitely does need to get out there as well. So yes.
Any other comments from council? Councilor Praga.
I would support the motion also, and I think that you know, in the obviously living on the mainland, that if the WJ Henderson has a policy or there's a policy, it should fit both sites. And again, different community. Most of the WJ Henderson stuff is township stuff and a bit of minor hockey, but I do agree with the mover and the seconder that we're looking at maybe a different demographic And I've sat a few times in the ferry lineup, and it is interesting to see what's going on from my point of view. I'm obviously not an islander, so I don't understand what goes on, and I don't think it's going to bog down the system in my general viewpoint of things. Oh, and I just to add that, you know, obviously if there was another maybe a declaration of emergency, maybe something would be in the policy to say, you know, at certain times, maybe we just stick to whatever's in that declaration, et cetera.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Deputy Mayor.
Through you, your worship, I appreciate the comments of colleagues. I'm not indifferent to some of the concerns that staff have. I don't know whether from a point of order point of view, this could be a friendly amendment, but I wondered if there could be an expectation within a certain timeline, whether it's 6 months, a year, for staff to be able to report back on precisely what the usage is and whether, you know, whatever policy ends up getting implemented, how effective that is. So that council can review it at that time if necessary. I mean, hopefully, it seems to be there's a consensus built here. And hopefully it would be effective, but I would want to give the opportunity for it to be reviewed if necessary.
So would that be a friendly amendment to the mover to have a report come back after a year? Sure. Seconder?
An additional friendly amendment if I could.
Can we just, is that a friendly amendment
Yes,
for you?
very
Okay,
friendly.
thank you. So that one's put away now. The second one.
Just because the summer season is the timeline, so I'm wondering if staff would be able to have this policy put in place by May 1st, so that we have it available as quickly as possible.
Is that a doable timeline? Okay,
Yes.
that is friendly.
Yes.
Mover and seconder. Okay. So we have a motion with 2 amendments. Any other comments from staff or from? Oh, my word, it's must be getting close to 9. From council. Councilor Ennis.
Mr. Mayor, just a clarification on the motion. So is this a policy that's going to come back to council, or is this or not before it's implemented?
All policies must come back to council for final approval. That answer,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to support the notion of, I guess, one concern is the impact on staff time that might be possible, might not. So just to support the deputy's comment that this come back at some time for review, so we can sort of make an assessment, a reassessment at that point.
Okay, I think everyone has spoken to it except me, and I will. I'm going to be the outlier on this one. I'm not supporting it. My years of working as one of the road authority, I believe it's been proven that keeping some signs strictly for the road authority's use for information from the road authority to the users of a system is needed. And I think that this is a time that I believe this is a time that these signs should be used strictly for that. So I'm not going to support it. Yeah, I do have concerns with it. But it looks like it looks like it probably will go through. If it does go through, I look forward to seeing the policy so that we can review it at council and make sure that the concerns are addressed. So with that, back to the mover. Any final comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Opposed? Motion has passed. Lakeside Ponds. Phase 2, Stage 3, assumption of a 1-foot reserve. Any comments from staff?
No comments, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, we do have the report with the recommendation. Yes.
Motion to approve.
So moved, seconded by
Sure.
Councillor Parks. Any comments from council? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Lakeside Ponds Phase 2, Stage 3, assumption of 1 foot reserve, blocks 29 and 30. Any questions? I'm going to assume staff don't have further comments on these ones because they're very routine. So if there is, let me know. We have the motion or the recommendation. Do we have a mover? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Budrick. Any comments? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor, raise a hand. Motion is passed. Aurora by the Lakes, Phase 1, assumption of 1 foot road reserve or 1 foot reserve, block 34. Any questions from council? We have the recommendation. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Broderick, seconded by Councillor Willis. We know my timelines. Any comments? Call a question. All those in favor? Motion is passed. Lakeside Ponds, Phase 2, Stage 2, Block 50. Any questions? We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Councillor Budrick. So moved, seconded by Councillor Ennis. No comments? Call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Communication for considering notice of motion or direct motion. Do we have any direct motions this evening? Seeing none, do we have any notice of motion? Seeing none. We have the consent agenda for the purpose of convenience and for expediting meetings, matters of business that are of repetitive or routine nature and are included in the consent agenda. All such matters of business contained in the consent agenda are voted on collectively. A particular matter of business may be singled out from the consent agenda for debate or for a separate vote upon the request of any councillor. In the case of a separate vote, the excluded matter of business is severed from the consent agenda. Each and every matter of business contained in the consent agenda is recorded separately in the minutes of the meeting. Are there any items which council wish to extract? Seeing none. We have a motion. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Broderick, seconded by Councillor Willis. Any comments or questions? No, I have one. Building activity report. With the planned industrial developments and I'm hoping commercial as well, that will be coming on very shortly and is ongoing. I was wondering if we could receive in the next reports similar charts that there are for residential to be able to show how we're progressing with industrial and commercial. In the residential, it shows each month and then, you know, the year to for the last few years, how we've fared. If we're like typically we're increasing in permits and in value. I was wondering if we could just have something very simple for the other two, so we could track those as we proceed.
Yes, so through your viewership, that should not be a problem. Could I just ask for clarification?
Yes.
So typically on the residential area, on the residential tables, we show new residential and renovation. So would you like that information broken down as well for commercial and industrial? So new commercial versus reno commercial. Same with industrial.
I'm not as concerned with that as much as just how we're advancing in it. For like I said, the permits and the one thing with that would, the value would far away depending on what's happening with maybe few permits, but a large dollar value. So I was just so we could track it to see how we're making out. I think it would be good for the public to see that as well. Is that okay? Thank you. So there were no questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. Updates from members appointed to county council, committees, or local boards. Do we have any information to bring back? Seeing none, members' privilege. Does anyone have an item? Councillor Booger.
Just like to pass along condolences to the Purvis family and passing of Tanis. Battled cancer for a few years and unfortunately passed at the age of 46, and very upset. Rob is a business owner in our municipality at our Loyalist East Business Park, and just fantastic people, and it's a terrible tragedy.
I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. Any other items coming forward? Seeing none. Confirmatory bylaw. Do we have a mover for the confirmatory bylaw? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Willis. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Upcoming meetings, Renewable Energy Fund on the 15th at 6 p.m. Also the Committee of the Whole at 6 p.m. on the 16th. Oh no, that's the one that's canceled. Sorry. We were too efficient. The 21st of February, the Renewable Energy Fund Advisory for Ward 2-3. And on the 27th, regular council meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Booger. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. You are adjourned.